And we're live with my old friend Tracy Newman. Tracy, thank you for doing this again. We haven't done this in it's 6 years.
It's been 6 years.
It's six
You know what I
years.
liked about the way we did it then? Weren't we sitting next to each other?
We were sitting next to, and there were all kinds of, I forgot, but there were all kinds of glitches the last time. We did a show and then the internet went out and we had to start all over. Do you remember
Oh, and
that?
it was so natural the first time through.
And Pete was with us and
Yeah,
Liza was
Pete.
there.
Yeah.
And we had this whole thing going on, and then it went out and we had to start all over, and then you didn't want to tell the stories again.
No, who wants to? You'd already heard him, and so had this crew.
Well, but yeah, but so some of those stories didn't get told. I kind of made you tell a couple of them again, and we'll see. I was going to say we have so much current events to talk about that if we don't get to
Yeah,
all your history, I'll just put up the link to the last show and people can catch up. But
true.
okay, so let's start with I just watched the night before last PeeWee as himself,
Hmm.
and it seeing you and Lynn, it's going to make me cry now, but seeing you
Yeah.
and Lynn on there was very emotional for me. I'm sure it was for you. So
Yeah, and,
tell us
and
about
Lorraine too. Lorraine was on there. Well, Lorraine's
Laraine was
alive,
on there. That's
but
right.
and
Laraine was
Lynn.
on there too.
Uh,
So
yeah.
tell us about which will get us into the Groundlings. Tell us about how you met PeeWee and what your relationship with PeeWee was, and then how you met Lynn. And
Yeah, I Paul came and PeeWee, Paul Rubens, auditioned for the Groundlings I think it was like 1975 or six. It might
so,
have been
and
early.
what year did you
Well, the
start that?
Groundlings, I was there in this 1972 is when we really started it was a class
Right.
at the Cellar Theater
Now,
on
was that when you were teaching or before you were
No, I
teaching?
wasn't teaching Gary
Okay.
Austin. It was just a Gary Austin class. That's the one where when you hear things like that, Pat Morita and Tim Matheson and Craig
Right.
Nelson, people like that were in it. They were in that original class.
Uh-huh.
Steve Bluestein, Jimmy Martinez, some of these people you don't, Valerie,
Uh-huh.
some of these people you don't know. But it was, and Lorraine, I brought Lorraine there.
Right.
It was an amazing class. And, I don't even remember who turned me on to the class because I had seen improv in New York, but I'd
Okay, I
never
was going to say,
been.
what were you doing? Were you playing music prior to that? What were you
No,
doing before that?
what I was doing actually right before the Groundlings class started was first of all I was dating Ricky Jay.
Okay, that had already happened. Okay,
Yeah, and
we're going to
also
be
I
all
was
over the place.
I was a
Ricky Jane, you
preschool,
did.
the magician, and I was a preschool teacher.
Okay, I didn't know in what order that was.
Well, I'm like a preschool teacher from 69 to 71. And then I met Ricky somewhere like around that time at the Magic Castle.
Right.
And we started dating. And even though I was on the Tonight Show
Okay, now,
I know,
but
I'm
now,
just trying to get the chronology. That's
right,
like
but
for
how
myself.
old were you when you were on the Tonight? What year was the
It was
Tonight Show?
like in 1974. So I
Oh,
was
that was later. Okay.
32. Yeah. And the weird thing is I keep thinking that I was with Ricky when I did the Tonight Show, but I wasn't. I had already whatever had happened with me and Ricky and all the stuff I had learned to
Right.
get on the Tonight Show. Uh, I don't know. I don't know why I was so far away from that,
But
but
okay, but you didn't know magic before Ricky J. That or did
no,
no.
nothing, nothing, not even interested. I mean,
So
I don't know, Vicky. I don't know what came over me. You like he was living at my house. Had a house at the beach, and we were living together. And he
okay,
was.
now wait a minute. How did you have a house at the beach as a
I
teacher or
rented
pre?
it. I rented it, and it was $300 a month.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was
Okay.
also at that time, Vicky. It was for sale for $36,000.
But 300 a month in the 60s
Was a lot.
was a lot of money.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I had my family. I
Well,
let's
let's
see.
talk about that for a second
I
because
had already been to New York. I had worked. I had some
oh,
money.
wait, you'd already been to New York as
Just singing and stuff. Those black and white videos of me
yeah,
doing that show called
with the
What's
little
New with the
hat.
little cap.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the banjo one is just
Yeah.
about to hit 7 million hits, which is like, and that was, I posted that in 2015, so it was before you learned how to monetize.
Right.
So
Oh, please. I just found out that my biggest video has not been getting, none of mine have been monetized. There was
right
they turned something off with it. Anyway.
on
Yeah.
it, it
Yeah.
all makes me so angry now. But anyway, I know in fact,
7 million
this is
would have
probably
gotten you at least $10.
right. So this must be so confusing for anybody watching. But anyway, while I was, because I
No, oh
think
wait,
this is
we got to start.
interesting.
Wait, we got to start at the beginning, just because I have to understand how these. We're going to do it really quickly. How these things came to be. What did your dad and mom do?
My father was I had a biological father too.
Mhm.
My mother divorced him. He was an actor, my biological father. But my stepfather was in the quilting business.
Okay, was your
And my
biological
mother,
father successful?
he did movies, but no, I would say he was an alcoholic and he eventually was selling shoes. And he didn't, my mother was kind of working as his agent,
Okay,
and,
but your
but
mom
she
was
had
like a
two
glamour
kids.
puss.
Yeah, but with two kids.
Okay, and so she didn't work outside the home, really.
No, not really. And it was just a very hard thing for my mom. And I think that, they were very much in love, but he couldn't make a living because he was
Okay,
drinking. And so she divorced him when I was 5 and my brother was 7, my older brother, and remarried 3 years later to this man who was in the quilting business, who was very funny. Arnold was very funny. And Arnold is, she and Arnold had
uh,
Lorraine and Paul.
right.
So Lorraine's father,
Paul Newman, I
yeah.
might add.
Yeah. Lorraine and Paul, people don't know that Laraine Newman has a twin. People who know who Laraine Newman is don't know
Uh-huh.
that she has a twin. His name is Paul Newman. And anyway, they were born from the match of my mother and my stepfather. But I was already 9 years old when that happened. So, like when Lorraine was 9, I left home. I
Right.
went to New York.
Okay, so when you went to school, were you weren't doing comedy? When did you start playing guitar
I
and
started
and
playing
and
guitar when I was 14, and I had relatives who played banjo and guitar who were not well known, but they had a lot of well known friends. And so
oh,
I was thrown into like Theodore
like give us a
Bickel.
name. Like who?
Theodore Bickel is a good
Oh,
example.
wow. I saw him
And
in Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah.
yeah, and
Uh-huh.
he's the only one I can. Oh, and the Limelighters. Alex Hasselov was a friend
Uh-huh.
of mine, and I met Bud and Travis, who were big stars at the time, and there I was surrounded by the beginnings of some of these, not Theodore McKell's career, but some of these other
Right.
careers,
Uh-huh.
the beginnings of them, and I was a kid that played guitar and was pretty good quickly. I was good with my hands, with eye-hand coordination.
Obviously, the magic, the
So
guitar.
that's why that was able to happen. When I was with Ricky, that I was able to pick up some
But
of the
that's
things.
more than that, Tracy. That's more than good hand-eye coordination. You've got a big level of genius going
Well,
on.
I
I mean,
I don't know about that, but I can tell you that
I
I was.
know about that. You've done a lot of things really well. A lot
Oh,
of
this is very
things.
flattering.
Well, it's all really true. I mean,
Well,
it's
all I'm saying is that being around Ricky day and night and watching what he was doing, I was like a sponge, and he didn't really know that. And it isn't, and I don't mean that I knew how he did his tricks, because people think when they're doing tricks around me that oh, don't do that in front of her, she'll know what you're doing. I don't know. I'm just as wide-eyed and stupid about how a trick is done as anybody is, or not stupid but ignorant. What I learned was the pretty stuff, the manipulations, the fans, the cuts, the shuffles, the waterfalls, the spreads. I learned how to do that, but I really, really learned it. So when I say I was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, that's why. because I was so passionate about it, and he loved it. He loved seeing that, and I had an opportunity. I I was doing women's hands, doing card things for a couple of years. We did photos and then they sent those out, and then people thought, oh, here's a woman that can handle cards and has women's hands. They were having men do women's hands. So I was doing Sally Field's hands and the girl with something extra. And
Wait, to show the trick they were using? What were they
just
using?
to deal cards at Vegas and stuff like that in a movie, in a TV show.
Oh, I see.
So what I was doing was a Bob Hope special. By the beginnings of
Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying to make sure we're on Facebook. So go ahead.
This is how Johnny Carson and I met. I was doing
what
a
a
Bob
sentence
Hope.
that is.
I know. I was doing a Bob Hope special, and this was in 1974 or 73, 74.
Wait a minute. Why were you doing a Bob Hope special?
Because they needed somebody to do Diane Cannon's hands.
Oh, you were doing hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you remember the movie Paper Moon?
Oh, excuse me. My mother's friends with Tatum.
It's just a brilliant movie.
Brilliant
and they
movie.
did a takeoff that's when the movie was out. So they did a takeoff of Paper Moon on the Bob Hope special, and Diane Cannon played, I guess she was playing the kid, Tatum. But anyway, they needed somebody, she needed to deal cards. And looked like she could handle cards. So this was one of the most exciting things I ever did, actually. Here I am at this point in my life, and they were talking about the 70s. They brought me out in her blouse, Diane's blouse. I did a routine at the table with the cards.
Right.
Then then I left, the audience applauded me. I left, and then they speeded it up and showed it right there in the thing. And then the reaction of the other guys at the poker table to the way she was dealing and the way she was manipulating the cards. Anyway, we had to rehearse that a week before the show. And when we rehearsed it, somebody told Johnny Carson that there was a woman handling cards over at the
And
Bob
Johnny loved
Hope. And he
magic.
came running over with his makeup bib on and introduced himself, and we talked for a while. And then when I went home, I wrote a sketch for me and Ricky Jay to do on the Carson show, because Ricky had been on the Carson show.
Okay, but now you and Ricky were no longer a thing, but you were still friends.
Oh, yeah, but good friends, yeah. So I wrote the sketch, and then when I went to shoot the special, the Bob Hope special, I saw Johnny Carson on his golf cart. Somebody was driving him, I guess, to the studio. It was near me. I stepped in front of it. And, that's the kind of thing you'd be shot for now.
You ballsy thing.
And so
Now, wait a minute. This was after he saw you doing the thing?
After he saw me at this rehearsal, at the Bob Hope rehearsal.
How much later was this?
Just a week later.
A week later.
And
so you stopped the cart.
I stopped the cart, and he was sitting in the back, and I said, remember me, Tracy Newman, the cards? And he went, me like this, and I handed him the sketch, and then they went off. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from, at that time it was Hank Bradford was the head writer, and I actually knew him too from New York, from the improv, and they had rewritten it for me and Johnny to do instead of me and Ricky, which didn't make Ricky happy.
Oh, I bet that's true.
No, that was kind of a drag. But anyway, it was a very fun thing. And then
was he like as Karnak or something?
Well, that's the thing. When they rewrote it, it was for me to come out of the audience as a ringer, and like Ed McMahon, he's doing card tricks for Ed McMahon, and Ed McMahon saying, "You're terrible. Anybody can do this better than you." Excuse me, I just knocked this over. Are you still okay, sound wise?
Yes.
I can pick anybody out of the audience and they'll come up here. And so every bunch of people raise their hands, right? But I raised my hand and he called on me. And I came down there and I did this routine with the cards. And then I said, that's how it's done. And I walked backstage instead of back to my seat. I just walked backstage. And they said to me, wait backstage because he might call you out to do the panel. And I'm standing back there thinking, no, why would he call me out to do the panel? Doesn't make any sense. But he did because he was so interested in what this
Off.
young girl was doing with cards when he knew how long it took and how much practice it took to do
Well,
it.
he also he loved magic above
He
everything
loved
else.
magic and he was good at it himself, obviously. And he could do the
Mhm.
stuff, he could do all the stuff I could do, but he hadn't practiced it like I had, not recently. So
What kind
that's
of
all
practice did that take, Tracy? Excuse
it
me.
was like, well, as I said on the Tonight Show, it was like at least 6 hours a day. And I learned to drive and be cutting cards with my left hand. I was constantly doing it.
Wow.
You
Because
know,
my husband is a mentalist and a magician. He and a comedian, and but he does mentalism.
who is
That's his
this?
thing. Gabe Abelson.
Oh,
That's his thing. He's a mentalist.
wait a
He's
minute.
mental, all
Are you
right.
talking about your ex?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but he's a writer, right?
Well, he's a comedy writer, and he wrote for Letterman and Leno and all of those people. But mentalism was his thing, and he used to go do it for Dave. He was his head monologue writer, and he would go in when they
And
would
do
do the
mental.
monologue jokes, and Dave would just make them do stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
because
amazing.
these talk show hosts love magic.
They
It's
love it.
like,
Well, anyway, that's my wonderful Johnny Carson story. And if you want to see it, you just go Tracy Newman, Johnny Carson. And there's a sketch, which is one video, and then the panel is another video.
and so you were ballsy enough to stop his cart. Were you
That
ballsy?
was,
I mean, I've watched the Johnny
I,
Carson thing. It was a long time ago. Were you ballsy sitting as a guest on his show?
I was very comfortable.
Wow.
It's really a function of him. You know, he he was so easy to talk to for me. I was so comfortable. I was
Wow.
comfortable doing the sketch too. I look back on that, on me doing the card stuff in the sketch and think,
Hmm.
how did I have how did my hands not shake?
Okay, this is what I was going to ask you.
I don't know.
Now, do you ever have you ever gotten nervous performing comedy?
Always terrified,
Always.
terrified. But when I sing and play guitar on stage, I don't even, it has become I know you're supposed to be a little nervous because that means you care. Well, it doesn't mean I don't care. I do care, but I'm not nervous at all.
Okay,
Not at
how
all.
about the other day I saw you? We'll talk about Lynn Stewart a little bit. You did you sang in front of this memorial service, this celebration of Lynn's life. A lot of people in showbiz. Um, does that doesn't make you nervous either?
No, not at all. Because first of all, the Christmas song that Lynn Stewart and I wrote together, I have sung that song for 30 years. I've sung that song certainly every year, and usually more than that. And I know it really well, so I'm not worried about the things that you could be worried about when you're playing and singing is the playing and the singing.
Mhm.
So I'm not worried about any of it. And I know that I am comfortable up there. I don't know how to explain it. It
It's
doesn't matter.
wonderful.
If you're singing for 10 people or 1,000 people, it doesn't really matter as long as the sound system's good.
I understand it because people always tell me good luck and break a leg when I do these shows, and they don't understand that this doesn't make me nervous. I love
No,
this.
no, this
So
is what
yeah,
you do.
yeah,
This is your comfort level,
yeah. This is
you
my
know,
comfort zone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
comfort zone.
Okay, so you had gone to New York, and were you playing like Folk City and places like that? Where were
I
you
was playing
performing?
the bitter end
Oh God.
mostly.
Hmm.
And in fact, for about a year off and on, I was like the opening act or the MC or that kind of thing. And I presented so many acts,
At
you
the
know,
bitter end?
at the bitter end. Yeah, this
And
was in
my club was the other
1964.
end next door, which that was the one that I
Yeah, but you're
booked.
later.
Oh yeah, I'm way later,
You're
but
way
it's
later.
right
I'm
there.
way older than you, girl.
No, you're not that
You're a
much older than me.
child.
I got to that late because I was doing other things. But anyway, okay,
But I mean, I was there when I think Dylan was there. I think he was already a celebrity.
uh-huh.
But he was hanging around there. I never met him, I never saw him, but people would say, "Oh, he was here the other night" or whatever. And
Who do you remember introducing anybody
I knew
that?
Phil Oakes.
Oh, wow.
I knew Phil Oakes, not well, but
Hmm.
enough to say hi to, and he knew my name
Uh-huh.
and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, we were in the same thing. He just was more well known.
Right.
And I don't know. You know, the reason I ended up at the Groundlings probably is I'm in show business probably to be entertained. You know, I like to
I feel
laugh,
that way.
and the Groundlings was the funniest place I had ever been. And
Okay, so
so
what attracted you? We sort of talk. Okay, so you're a musician in New
in New
York. You
York,
come
yeah.
back to LA, Ricky J, that becoming a teacher. What did you teach?
Nerd preschool.
Preschool.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you didn't need a college degree for that. You could, no,
Oh,
no, not at a private school. If you had
okay.
skills, I had skills. Was really good with children. I'd written a lot of children's songs by then. I was the perfect age. I was, energetic. That's all you need.
I didn't know you'd already written children's songs. Well, that's a
Well, I had
precursor
written
to
some,
what's
yeah, in
come.
fact,
Yeah.
in somewhere I had some songs on the Captain Kangaroo show, and I think back on
Wow.
that now, and I think, "Now, how did that happen?" But it did. It happened.
That's crazy. I hadn't thought about Captain Kangaroo until I watched the
The
PeeWee,
PeeWee thing, yeah.
and I was reminded Howdy Doody and Captain Kangaroo, and oh my
Me
God.
too.
Okay, so you're a teacher now. What happens?
Um, I'd get my timelines all mixed up. Sometime around 1972, I don't know who introduced me to Gary Austin or took me to that class,
Hmm.
but maybe somebody saw that there was going to be a class by a thing on a bulletin board. I don't know. I don't remember. I had seen improv in New York, but never done it because I used
Hmm.
to hang around the improv, which was, I got to see some great people improvising. And that was really funny to me. And when I saw that there was going to be a class, I thought I'd like to learn how to do that. So I go and I'm there once or twice. And then Lorraine was in Paris, came back from Paris. And I said, "You got to come to this." And Vicki, I didn't know that Lorraine could do what she could do.
Now, wait, so how old are you and how old is she
Well,
approximately?
I'm 9 years older than her. So
Right.
she was about 21. So I was about
Okay.
30,
Uh-huh.
something like that. I must have been 30 because it's 1972. Yeah.
Hmm.
And uh, I brought her there and I knew she was funny and she did voices because I would hear that at home when she was little. But when I saw her get on stage at the Groundlings for the first time, I, I was completely blindsided by that. I was blown away. I had said
Did she have training? Had she done anything?
I think she had done improv at Cal Arts where Paul was, Paul
Oh,
Rubens.
yes. Hmm.
I don't know why he didn't mention her from Cal Arts, but she was there
Oh,
with
they
him.
knew each other there?
Yeah,
Ah.
she's the one that mentioned the Groundlings.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember who he said mentioned the Groundlings, but it was Lorraine. And she got on stage, and Gary Austin, the director, said, "What's an attitude for her, an adjustment?" And I said, "Fainting spells as an adjustment, right?" I can't even describe how funny she was in this scene with the, I don't know, she was in a scene with a couple, I don't even know who else was in the scene or what they were doing or talking about, because every single time she fainted was a different way of fainting. And it was so physically funny. And we were all blown away. We were just, she was physically, she weighed like 2 pounds,
Yeah.
and she had
Yeah.
been studying at the Marcel Marceau School in Paris. So she
Wow.
was she was very aware of her body and how to use it. And but she was also worried about hurting herself. So when she would fall on the floor, she would do it slowly and get down very carefully and then pass out. And that made everybody laugh really hard. She was so funny. And she had characters and oh my God. Anyway, So that was the first iteration of the Groundlings, and then we moved from the Cellar Theater to the Well, we had a lot of moves, but the Oxford Theater eventually, which was where Lily Tomlin and Lorne Michaels saw Laraine, and where
Uh-huh.
Phil Hartman saw the Groundlings, and Phil Hartman joined back then too.
Okay, I have to ask you a question because I was very disturbed seeing that little clip of Phil Hartman on the PeeWee special.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, what he said?
yeah, was it really bad? Was it bad blood between them, between
Yeah,
him and PeeWee? It
yeah.
was.
But I really, I some people thought it was because Phil left the kids show, the Pee Wee's Playhouse,
Mhm,
to do SNL. Well,
mhm.
Paul would have to be crazy to be mad at Phil for that. I mean, you can be mad at him for a week, and upset.
Right,
You can be upset, but you can't be mad at him.
right.
So, I mean, Paul wasn't crazy. I mean, he might have had his crazy moments, but
Mhm.
so I think it had more to do with money.
Well,
With
from to hear Phil tell it, Paul didn't pay him.
no, but it isn't that he didn't pay him for the Pee Wee's Playhouse. What Paul didn't pay anybody for were the dolls.
Oh,
The Captain Carl doll, which I don't think even I'm not even sure he even made a Captain Carl doll. I really don't know, but he made a Missy Vaughn doll
I
and a
know.
John B doll, and I have those, but I don't have a Captain Carl doll, so I'm
I
not
have a
sure.
Missy Von doll.
Yeah, and so you know,
Well, so he didn't
uh,
pay Lynn for that either?
he didn't know, and he didn't pay John Paragon, but
Oh,
they were still involved with Paul. So and their careers were still tied up with Paul.
uh-huh.
So even though I believe they were angry and upset and
Mm,
hurt,
mhm,
these kinds of things are pretty common, by the way it happened. But Paul had the power to pay them and he had the money.
mhm,
So I think he was being advised, probably, and took advice that wasn't friendly,
mm.
wasn't,
Did it impact his relationship with Lynn and
no, because Lynn, you know what Lynn was like.
she
Lynn,
loved
she
everybody?
loved Paul. She loved
Mm,
Paul and Phil and John. I mean,
mm,
when all three of them were gone, her last year and Cindy Williams dying also, who was such a
right.
close friend of hers. That was a big chunk out of her life was
Mhm,
gone.
mhm.
So Lynn getting sick and dying was something I never expected Lynn to die. I
Okay,
never expected Lynn to die before me.
okay,
Yeah.
so Lynn, oh God, when did Lynn come into the story?
She came into the Groundlings in the 70s,
Hmm.
and for a couple of years she actually left. And I remember, I know why, but I can't remember why right now. And then she came back. I think it had to do, she had a boyfriend in another group and she joined that group, kind of thing,
Mm,
possibly.
hmm.
Or maybe Gary didn't put her on stage doing enough thing. I don't know. I
Hmm.
doubt that. Uh, the Groundlings, I was just watching a little clip on Instagram of John Lovitz or TikTok talking to Howard Stern about Howard Stern asking him but Phil Hartman was at the Groundlings for 10 years. Why was he not discovered before then? And Lorne Michaels asked that too.
Hmm.
Why is this guy there for 10 years? The reason anybody was there for 10 years without being discovered was that the Groundlings Theater wasn't open until 1979. We built it in 74. We couldn't get a parking permit. We were playing at a place called the White House. We were playing at the Improv. We were playing, you know, uh, what those shows that you do for companies. I can't think of those things with the
Oh,
think of
yeah,
the word.
God,
Anyway, doesn't matter.
yes. Oh,
But anyway,
industrials.
industrials. We were
Hmm.
doing
Hmm.
everything but we were doing shows at the Groundlings, but you couldn't invite anybody or charge money. So
Oh.
we would do it on the sly and everything. So when SNL had Laraine and they had a
Okay, so wait, so that's before Lynn came around. How did Lorraine how did that happen? You said Lily and Lauren came. What
Well,
happened?
there's
Was
a
Lorraine wasn't the only, was she the only one that got picked?
no. He apparently, now again, I could, Lauren could come right on here and say, "Well, that's not true. I
Mhm,
didn't,"
mhm.
you know. But to my knowledge, at the time, he offered the show to Archie Hahn, Liberty Williams, maybe Jim Lashley, and maybe Sandy Helberg. When I say offered the
Really?
show, I'm not sure how hard those offers were.
Right.
Clearly, he made a hard offer to Laraine, enough so that she took him up on it. Archie wouldn't have left, Liberty wouldn't have left, and I don't know about the other two. But Art Liberty had a huge career here, even though you've never heard of her. She
Mhm.
was in the Mary Tyler Moore show. She was Rhoda's sister, which was toward the end of when I think Rhoda, somebody gets married, and that's when you meet Liberty Williams, Louise Williams, as Rhoda's sister. And then when Rhoda did her own show, was called Rhoda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. uh, Instead of using Liberty, who was better looking than Rhoda and tiny and adorable, they decided to go the other way. And thank God for them, because Julie Kavner, for me, was like,
Yeah,
to
fantastic.
me, she was the show.
Mm.
And Liberty then was going to play Tabitha. They were going to do a spinoff of Bewitched, and she was Tabitha, and Archie Hahn at the Groundlings was going to be her husband. And they did a pilot, and it didn't go. So those things were happening, but those things were happening.
Right.
So they weren't going to leave Los Angeles to go possibly do a late night live show that may not make it past one episode. Because that's
Right.
how, most pilots don't go.
Right.
So and I can't believe that Lorne would come to the show and not make that offer to Archie and Liberty. They were such stars, clearly
Mhm.
stars. And anyway, so where were we? We were talking about Laraine. So Laraine.
Yeah. How did, so how,
So
so,
here I did when I, oh God. People say I should write a book, and they say that because they don't want to hear all this from, they don't want to hear me talking about
mm,
it. But they ask questions, and these things are the truth. So
right.
I did a show with Lily in New York
Oh,
called The Psychedelic Follies, an off-Broadway show. Probably a terrible show. I have no idea. All I know is we both sang.
what
So
year was this?
this was in 60. Well, I was only in New York from 64 to 66, around there. So it had to be 64,
Wow.
65, 66.
So this is before Lily's.
This is before, I don't know what year Laugh-In was, but yeah, she was getting to be a little bit well known, but I don't remember how. But she was at the Improv all the time doing her act, and I mean, it
Yeah.
was so clear.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did that show together. So I knew Lily. So I ran into Lily when she moved out here or came out here. And she said, "I'm going to do a special and I'm looking for some people." And I said, "Well, we have a company called, we didn't have the name yet, the Groundlings, but maybe by then we did have the name. I don't remember exactly when we named ourselves. But anyway, come down to there." And she came there and brought Lorne. And they saw Laraine and
And
other
so
people.
ended up not taking people for her special, ended up
No,
taking
they
people
took
for,
Laraine and others. They took many people.
well,
Well,
no, but
they
that
were,
was for Saturday Night Live. That
no,
wasn't
for
for
the
Lily's show.
special, for the Lily
Oh,
special.
oh,
You can look on YouTube and see sorority sisters or something like that. Lily Tomlin's special sorority scene, and Lorraine's doing the Valley Girl, and so is Lily, and so is
oh,
Valerie Bromfield. They are all doing a version of the Valley Girl, and it's wonderful. It's a very
ah.
good sketch. Yeah, write that down. Uh,
And
and
wait, what's the show called?
it was Lily Tomlin special,
Oh,
and
okay.
just about sorority scene.
Sorority scene. All right.
Yeah,
And
and you'll
that's
see
on
Lorraine,
YouTube?
and that's on YouTube.
Okay,
And
great.
and I love YouTube. I love the fact that
Mhm.
you can just
It's
refer to YouTube. It's
fabulous.
just amazing. So you and I are speaking from the point of view of people who've lived through the time when there was no YouTube. Maybe some of the people watching this don't even know anything, other than YouTube. But anyway, I doubt that though. So anyway,
No, most of the people watching this are old like
they're
us.
well, they're older than that.
Yeah.
So Lily came, and then the rest for Laraine is history. And then
Well, so she did Lily's special first, and then Lorne already had
And then
handpicked.
Lorne was going to do a couple of months later. He was in the situation with, might have been more than a couple of months, uh, with Saturday Night Live, and he came back and, you know, or either
Did you go
maybe
to New
offered
York?
him.
Did you go to New York to see Lorraine on Saturday Night
I
Live?
saw it once. Yeah, I went once.
Mhm.
It was a
So you
Christmas.
weren't there for that first show.
No, you know, you got to remember that wasn't a big deal.
Right.
You know, people were doing pilots all around me.
Yeah, yeah,
The fact that they had to go to New York to do it, I didn't know any of the people. You know,
yeah.
and that's why I was asking you before we did this show if you would had listened to or watched or read Lorne Michaels,
Lauren's
the
book.
new book.
No, but I saw the movie, and I got to tell you, that it didn't really work for me. Although the guy who played Lauren, I thought did a very good job. But
Yeah, you know, the
other
movie
than
was
that, I
okay. You know,
struggled with.
the book is good and also in other ways not great for me. It was a little, it's being read, I'm listening to it, and it's the writer that is reading it, and it's a woman, and she's doing impressions, and she's, oh, I hate saying anything bad about anybody, but you know, but when she's mispronouncing the words, she wrote the book. Instead of fruging, she says frugging.
Are you sure it's her
Yeah,
reading
it
the book?
says it's whatever her name is. It says and narrated by
Wow.
in the same name.
Wow.
I
That's
mean, and I'm just giving you one example. There are so many examples of mispronunciation that I'm thinking, what, you know, somebody, she must have interviewed people and then somebody notated that and then she just put it in as spoken and had never spoken it herself.
wow.
And then so she's reading it and didn't remember. I guess I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that
Wow.
happens.
Wow, that's
You
bad.
think
That's
somebody in the
just
studio,
bad.
you think somebody in the studio would have said frugging?
Yeah, you think she had an editor that would have
Yeah.
corrected that. Okay, so
So anyway, but the book, but on the whole, the book is holding my interest because it's of my time. And if you think
right,
about it, I mean, from 1974 all the way to now is this book, you know.
right, right.
So let's see what happened after that. Oh, then the Groundlings. That's why I'm going to explain this thing about Phil. Phil was there from 1974.
Right.
He didn't get chosen for any shows because nobody knew where to find us. In other words,
Wow.
Lorne had come to the Oxford Theater. That's where he saw us. And he didn't know where we were after that. So how could somebody come and find us?
How did he get Lorraine?
Came to the Oxford Theater with
Oh, and
Lily.
he asked her right there on the spot.
Oh, I don't
Mhm.
know. He just knew where she was, though.
Okay. Hmm.
You know, I don't know. I never met him back then, so I didn't know. You know, I saw Lily,
Hmm.
but I probably met him and didn't know
Hmm.
him.
Right.
You know, he wouldn't know me from Adam. I might know me by now, but so when somebody like Howard Stern says, why was Phil Hartman, who's so talented, there for 10 years without being discovered? That's why. We didn't have industry people coming. We had the talent. If you think Paul was there, John Paragon was there, Lynn Stewart, and then I could Kip King, who you know you don't know from Kip King from
Mm-mm.
Adam, but Chris Kattan's father
Mm.
was so funny. I mean,
Mm.
the depth of comedy talent there was staggering, and
Mm.
nobody was being discovered until Lovitz. Until they finally we opened the theater in the 1979 and in the 80s. Lorne came back or somebody came back and they discovered Lovitz. I think it was Lorne himself.
Hmm. So Lovitz went before Phil Hartman?
Yeah, and then when Lovitz
Wow.
kept saying to Lauren, "You got to have Phil Hartman. I don't understand why you don't want Phil Hartman." And finally, he came back, saw Phil Hartman again, and took him. He'd seen him when he saw Lovitz, but he didn't. He wasn't impressed.
That's insane.
It's insane, insane.
That's
And you know,
insane.
I was at a party at Lorraine's house, and Lauren was there. This was a party for Gilda, I think.
I remember
It was
hearing
her
about
life,
that party. That was at the end of her life, right?
near the end of her life,
Hmm.
but I she was they were carrying her around even though she could
Yeah.
walk.
Mhm.
And I said to Lauren, I said, well, so how does it feel to have Phil Hartman in your cast? And he said, God, I barely have to go to work. And that was the truth.
Yeah.
Phil could handle everything. I don't think people really, I mean, they could see him as a utility player on SNL. He would do
Mhm.
anything. He would do the voiceover. He would do the bit part. He would be the lead. He would be a woman. He would be a man. He would be a celebrity. He would, anything you want, Phil's there,
Mhm.
and he's not pushy. He's the easiest guy to get along with. It was like working with Ted Danson. Ted Danson, just the easiest guy to be around.
Who showed up for Lynn last week?
Yes, he was there. And Mary,
It was lovely.
very sweet.
So okay, and you worked with Ted because you did cheer. Okay, let's move along. So we're gonna move along. We're gonna move along. So you're doing the Groundlings. Are you enjoying performing?
No, I did. When I was emceeing, I liked it, or when I got to sing something and play guitar, which was not that often for that. Uh, but I, I became like an MC. Like I would host the panel of characters, that kind of thing, and help with writing now and then. And I was teaching and I was directing, but no, I was drifting out of performing. I was so terrified of it, of improv, just terrified.
Okay,
And
now wait. So you're just starting to write. Did you have a background in writing?
no,
No. Okay, because this gets huge. So, okay,
I also
so
met John Stark there, who became my
okay.
writing partner. I knew John Stark. I was directing him in various things. A lot of things started there, like Romy and Michelle, and a thing called Casual Sex, which became a movie. And so I was involved in all of those things. And John
Well,
Stark
so
was
you were
involved
just
in some of them.
writing on the off the cuff. You
No, I
just kind of
wasn't doing. I was doing some writing, but I was directing musical pieces. I was directing scenes. I don't know. I just drifted into, I don't know. I had an understanding of how to do that. I just think some people just have a knack for that,
and I'm just going to reiterate that you seem to have a knack to do a lot of things really well. Okay,
Well,
so it's not your average bear here we're
well,
talking
I think
about.
that when you have the freedom to follow your passions, I always had a little bit of money so that I wasn't worried about that. I think that when people are struggling to make the daily nut or the weekly nut, I don't know, I never really lived like that. I just always seemed to be okay. I'd sometimes look ahead and think, well, if I don't do something soon, I'm going to have to work, work, work. And I had jobs. I was a dental assistant and, you know,
Wow.
stuff like that.
Linda Apsey's on here. Linda was a dental assistant. That's
Oh,
funny.
really?
Okay,
Hi, Linda.
so you're yeah, there's a bunch of people that you know on here. Lorna's on here and Tova and
Hi, gang.
Nicole and yeah, we
Oh,
got
wow.
so okay, so you're directing, you're
I'm
moving
doing a
away
lot of the Groundlings, yeah, and in sketches at that time were developed through improv, and then they were worked on. And if you had a sketch in the show, you could have the sketch could be in the show for a year. Now it's only 3 months. Every 3 months, the whole show turns over. New
right.
director, new. I mean, it's really very fast paced now. It's scary as shit. Excuse my language, but back then you could have a scene in the show get better and better and better and better until it was perfect.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of incidental writing like we all did. And so did John Stark when he was there. And
And so how did that develop for
you
you?
know, I was doing a lot of looping. Remember we talked about looping?
Explain
background,
looping.
like the walla background walla in scenes on television and movies where if somebody's shooting you and I doing this, but there's a party going on over here, uh, and there's people on the screen, we can see them.
Hmm.
You have to get a group of improvisers. It used to be actors that they would get, and they would write the lines. If you can
Hmm.
imagine how tough that must have been. But anyway, you get improvisers, and they'll improvise a party
Hmm.
with the mics around them,
Hmm.
and that's
Hmm.
what looping is. You're
Hmm.
looping the sound.
Hmm.
Sometimes looping is also that you're looping the star's voice. So
Hmm.
they didn't pick up something and they can't get a hold of the star, so who can imitate Al Pacino? And then there's always was somebody in there that could get close to that.
Uh-huh.
So we were looping. John Stark and I did a lot of looping. We were making a living looping while we were in the Groundlings because we
Wow.
were living in the Groundlings. And one time he said to me, well, the people who were running Cheers at the time were Bill and Sherry Steinkellner, who had been in the Groundlings. So he said, Bill and Sherry
There you go.
are running Cheers, and they asked me if I had a spec script, and I don't know how to type. So I said, well, I know how to type. And I said, should we write something together? He said, yeah, let's do that. So that began.
Wait, how did you know what to do?
I just started watching Cheers, which I had seen, but I hadn't watched it regularly. So I started watching it all the time.
And did you have like a spec script to model?
We got spec scripts from the Writers Guild and from
Hmm.
friends,
Hmm.
and we at that time that was in 19. My daughter was born in 1982, so it was around that time. I wish I had a better. We started writing before we got Cheers, but we started writing, but like in 19. I'm sorry, we started writing in 1989. Charlotte, that's when we started writing. Because we went under the 10th season of Cheers was our first job, first staff job. Before that, we did freelance for about 2 years.
Oh,
And then
like what shows did you freelance on?
we did a thing we did a movie called, not a movie, but a 1 hour TV show called They Came from Outer Space with Dean Cameron and I don't remember the other guy's name, Stuart something. And oh my God, that was like going to college. That was the hardest job we ever
Do you
had.
remember what was the very first script you sold?
That might have been the
Mm.
first one was John Paragon. John Paragon was writing for a kids show called I wish I could remember the name of that. But anyway,
Hmm.
and he hired us, and we made $500 for writing what turned out to be 8 minutes of actual dialogue.
Hmm.
You had to write a half-hour thing, but 8 minutes of dialogue within that, and describe the story. And then they would do a cartoon, right?
Hmm.
It's a cartoon. So why can't I remember that? It's too bad because John Stark would know it right away. And that was our first thing. And then we realized, oh, okay, we started to understand things better. And then we rewrote. It's terrible that I'm not remembering the names of this.
This is par for the course, and the audience understands because we all do this all day long. So,
There was something with Christine Ebersol in it.
mhm.
She was great. And I mean, we wrote a couple things and then
Mhm.
we
Was it thrilling when you sold that first script?
yeah, well, not the Paragon thing was
Mm.
exciting, but not like
Mm.
selling this. They came from outer space because
Yeah.
that was we knew they were going to shoot a 1 hour thing that we wrote.
Hmm.
And it was about two aliens who were doing like Route 66. You
It
know,
sounds kind of familiar, actually. I might have seen
yeah.
it.
I mean, it was
Mhm.
you know what we learned. What we learned was how to rewrite, and that's what TV is.
Mhm.
Because the guy that was giving us notes actually said to us, we're kind of following the story of the movie Trading Places, and we'd already written a draft. And he said, let's scrap that and follow the story of coming to America. We had
What?
to completely rewrite this thing.
Wow.
This guy ran the show,
And
and
only after Eddie Murphy movies.
he put his name on as a co-writer on all the scripts but ours because he put us through the ringer. I mean,
Wow.
honestly. And but it taught us so much. We got to go to the shoot of that. Teresa Ganzel was in it. I remember
Oh, I
that.
love
That's when I
Teresa.
met Teresa.
Mhm.
And it just was it was really that was a really tough but fun experience. And then Bill and Sherry said, "Do you have any scripts?" We sent them one. We sent them a Cheers, and they said no. And then, like a year later, Sherry called us and says, "Do you have another spec script?" So we sent a Murphy Brown, and we got a call like a couple days later, and they hired us. And
For Cheers.
yeah, and I remember thinking, not only did we get that job, we got a good agent immediately because
Oh,
that agency was managing underwriting. I'm not sure what the term is. We didn't have to pay 10% to the agent either because they ran Cheers. They were the agent for Cheers.
mhm.
So that agent, Chris Silberman, who is now he was the president of ICM and then CAA, and then he did that merger, and then now he's upstairs, but he's still a fairly young guy. He might be in his late 50s or something. Looks like Tom Cruise, like a bald Tom Cruise. I loved him. Anyway, I thought to myself, first of all, I laugh all day. John Stark is so funny. We have a ball writing. And then I knew that from Cheers, what do? You don't go. We could go down from Cheers
How long were you at Cheers?
1 year, one season, and then
One
we left.
season.
We left.
Okay, now before you leave there, let's talk about George for a minute because we just
Oh,
lost George
George.
Wendt a couple of weeks ago. And
He was probably, well, look, that was pretty easy cast. What's her name? Kirstie Alley was there then. She used to eat during the read throughs chips and stuff, and you couldn't understand a word she said. And Fraser, not Fraser, Kelsey, who I kept calling Fraser, and he kept correcting me, had a ankle thing,
oh
drugs,
my.
at that time.
Wow.
And Woody was adorable and somewhat cocky, as you
Mhm,
can imagine. Uh,
mhm,
Ted was the rock.
mhm.
BB Newirth was so angry at everybody all the time because they were not professional.
Oh,
She would be on time for everything. She would be prepared. It was the 10th season for them. For her it was maybe I don't know how many seasons she did, but
mhm.
she was a relative newbie in the 10th season.
Right.
They only went 11 or 12 seasons. So we were there near the end, and Bill and Sherry left the show and took us with them, and they did Bob,
And
which
you
was
did Bob Newhart, and
Bob Newhart.
you wrote on that show as well.
Yeah, and I became friends with Bob and his wife.
Oh,
I really, I mean, I was much younger, but I just loved Bob Newhart. I
oh,
loved working for him.
I have to assume that he was as funny in real life as he
Oh
was
my
on.
God.
Oh
You know what?
God.
I'll tell you what, just for writers, anybody who's ever written for TV will appreciate this. Bob Newhart, when a joke didn't quite land, he would come up to you and he would say, "Do you mind if I say it like this?" And he'd change the wording, or he would come up with another joke.
Wow.
And you'd be so, go have at it, do it. I mean, you were there on the set to pitch jokes, but it was always for other people. You didn't have to do it for him.
Mm,
The guy was so good about knowing what he would say,
mm,
and he was so alert and on the case all the
mm.
time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, and then that
Another
was
one that was lost not that long ago,
no, not
Bob.
that long
Huh?
ago. Yeah.
Okay, so you work, how long did you work on Bob?
One season, two
One second.
seasons, and it only was I did like a season and a half, I think, 2 seasons,
Mhm.
and then I think after that we went to a show called Hardball. Hardball, I say hardball. I'm not. I'm reluctant to mention it because it was a flop, and it was such a horrible experience. It's bad to be on a flop. It feels really bad, and it was a flop for so many reasons. And again,
Who was
having
in Hardball? I don't remember.
Hardball was, let's see if I can remember this correctly. Bruce Greenwood,
Ah,
uh, Dan Florek, I think, and if I'm mixing him up with somebody else, I think it's Dan Florek though. That big tall guy from Coach,
oh yeah.
dumb guy,
That
Joe.
that's that he was married to oh my God. I'm totally I'm gonna be Catherine McClenahan.
Oh,
They
right,
were
right, right, right,
married,
right.
yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. And I don't
Hmm.
remember his name right now, but he,
Debe something Danish or Swedish or something like that. Yeah.
um, Joe Rogan,
Oh my God, my friend Jeff Sussman manages Joe
Allie
Rogan.
Wentworth,
Whoa.
Allie Wentworth, who's now married to what, a congressman or something, or a senator.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And in the second iteration of it, Rose Marie was in it.
Oh my.
Very strange choice. As the owner of the baseball, baseball team, it was a baseball team where they couldn't do baseball. They just couldn't. I mean, it was so ill conceived. I met some
Hmm.
fun writers on there, but it really, and they changed the creator was fired, and they brought in other people, and it was sad because some of those writers loved baseball and really wanted to do a baseball show.
Hmm.
And I know I'm leaving somebody out, but yeah,
Okay, so that went down the tubes
yeah, it sure
and
did. And
and
then,
then
well, sometime after that, we were on Ellen, but I don't remember if it was. Yeah, it must have been. I'd have to look at the years of those shows because we must have done. I think we would. I think we went on Ellen after that, and we were there for 4 or 5 seasons.
mhm.
We did, the coming out episode, and then that was our last season. We didn't do the season after that, and that was
Why?
well, we probably were fired. Although I don't know if
Okay,
my
so I want to ask you
partner.
about this because I know a lot of people that have
Yeah.
worked for Ellen, and a lot of people had a lot of issues. Did you guys have issues? Did you have trouble with Ellen?
Well, my partner had more issues than I did. They really didn't. They were like this. They didn't get along. He's a
Hmm.
big man, and
Hmm.
he's kind of an alpha type guy, and he's very funny, but he's I don't know how to explain what happened between them. Now that doesn't it wasn't just between them. There were problems. I mean, Ellen
Hmm.
Ellen was overextended at that time. She was doing one of the seasons. She was doing that movie, Mr. Wrong,
Hmm.
which was not the right thing for her to be doing, and she wasn't prepared at work. And when she wasn't prepared at work, she would get irritable,
Mm,
like anybody would in that situation. My
right.
feeling about Ellen was that she was overextended and too tired, and just would take it out on
Cranky.
people, get
Hmm.
cranky. But I don't think we didn't have as much trouble with her as it seemed like they had on the talk show,
Right.
you know. Um,
Well,
because if you think
she was a much bigger star by that point.
much bigger star, and also she was here. We are doing this show where she's dating men on the show, and something was wrong with the show, even though she was so charming that the
Hmm.
show was a quasi hit.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when she announced to the higher ups that she was not going to date men anymore,
What season was that?
it must have been the fourth season
Hmm.
or the third or fourth season.
Hmm.
That created, sort of like, well, what's going on? What are we going to do? Because there was this is a meeting. I don't think this meeting ever really took place. This is
Hmm.
a wonderful story. I'm going to tell it and I think I told it on the show last time, but there was supposedly there was a meeting between Michael Eisner, Mike Ovitz, and some of the Disney people and the ABC people were in the room as well. And Mike Eisner said, you know, Ellen is so charming and so good. Why isn't that show doing better? You know, she doesn't, it feels like she doesn't love anybody. Let's get her a boyfriend. And somebody in the room said, well, she's just said she doesn't want to date boys. You know, she's gay. And he said, well, then get her a girlfriend. Just like that. And I'm thinking, if that was the truth, man, that would have been amazing. I don't know if it was true. He'd get her a girlfriend. And Mike Ovitz said, don't even think about it.
Wow.
And he said, then get her a puppy. And so the episode was called the puppy episode, the coming out episode. And that's the story that I heard. Now, I was in the room all the time, so I don't know. You know, one of the executive producers says, no, it happened because somebody was throwing around ideas, you know, and she's probably right. But isn't that a great story? Because the thing is, Michael Eisner, that's so innocent, you know?
So did Ellen say, not only am I not going to date boys, but I want it out on the show?
Finally, after a couple of months after that, she had a party. We were at a party at her house where she had all the writers. And she said, I am going to come out this season. That's what I want to do. And I've checked that. I think the network already knew and the studio knew. And she said, we have to keep it quiet. It can't leave this room. There's like 20 people there. You know, it's like,
wow.
You know, and somehow it did leak out eventually, but it took a long time for it to leak out.
How much before it happened on the air had it leaked out?
I don't know exactly when it leaked out. Now,
but it was in the press before it happened?
Yes, and the season was 25, 26 episodes, and she came out on the 23rd episode. And you know, that little song I sang for you before we started this, that says, you know, they had
Can you sing a little bit of that little song?
Yeah, I can sing that. They had to wait till the 23rd show for her to come out of the closet. I wrote this based on a thing that we had used earlier in the season as a real, like a Mary Tyler Moore opening credits song. We just used it once. And then they said, well, let's take that same melody and write new words. Who's bright and kooky and gay? Who goes a different way? Who came out to all of her friends? Who, Ellen? Spence and Paige and Audrey and Joe all suspected, but they didn't know. They had to wait till the 23rd show for her to come out of the closet. Who's got a lesbian smile? Who's got a lesbian style? Who's that cuckoo lesbian chick? Who, Ellen?
I can't believe they let you use the word lesbian. I can't believe it.
You mean that they wouldn't? No, they didn't.
They didn't?
No, they got Melissa
Etheridge
on the show, and they were using her for the opening, the cold opening, and they thought, well, let's just use her again at the closing, and she gave Ellen a toaster oven for coming out. That's how that show ended.
Right.
And then, but in Europe, they used the jingle for some reason, my jingle, and Jolie Fisher was the one singing it, and so I started getting residuals all of a sudden for that.
And is this the thing that Snuffy was on your...
I think Snuffy was involved somehow because I saw his name on my BMI statement, yeah.
Okay, now, when you guys wrote the episode, did you know when you wrote it, okay, this is the shit?
I mean, you know, you can, any of the interview shows where my partner and I are on them about that episode, John always says the same thing. I didn't want to do it, he says. He didn't want to do it.
Why?
He was afraid that at that point in our career, he felt that would ruin us or make us. Now, that may be true, but it didn't feel true. Because, first of all, when they asked John and I to be the people to write that, it's because we were the only writers that had been there since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think Alex Hirschlag had also been there from the beginning, but I'm not sure about that. But anyway, we were the only team
Mm-hmm.
that had been there from the beginning, a man and a woman. It was like kind of the perfect thing. And I don't know why they asked us to do it unless that's the reason. Because we
How would that be perfect as opposed to a gay woman writing it?
They had gay people on the staff, and for some reason, because they were going to appeal to middle America and everybody, they were going to try to do this. Maybe they wanted a so-called straight. I mean, John and I were not a couple, but we were both straight. So I don't know. All I know is when we found out we were the ones going to write it, and John's saying, no, we can't do this. Don't you understand? We're going to be under a microscope. So far, we haven't been reviewed. We've had this great career. And I said,
had any of your episodes been nominated for Emmys prior to this?
No, we had won a PETA award for one of our episodes about lobsters. But with Mary Tyler Moore, by the way, which was so great. But anyway, no, we in fact, nothing on that show had been nominated that I know of. So anyway, they gave us, here we were working 5 days a week on the show, right? Coming in at 10, leaving at God knows when. The 3 months that they gave us 3 months to write a half hour, because this was going to be an hour show. We were going to write that half hour that ended with her coming out, and the executive producers of the show were going to write the second half hour where she tells her parents, and where she has Oprah, where she talks about this and everything, and tells her friends and stuff like that. I think that another episode was her telling her parents. Anyway, so when I found out they were going to give us 3 months to write it and we didn't have to come in but 2 days a week, I said, John, we're writing 22 minutes, ending with her coming out. We already know the story. And we have to write a funny script. Do we think we can't amuse ourselves in a 22-minute script? We've been writing now for, I don't know how many years. And so we actually had a ball writing that script. We really, really did. It was so much fun. There's stuff in there like, oh, men. I can't remember all this. I can't get enough of them or something, when she was trying to convince herself that she liked men. And the things she did in that episode on her own, she was so happy shooting that episode. There's a scene where she's sitting, boyfriend's got his arm around her. They're in a hotel room, and she's got a glass of water, a thing of water, and he keeps moving closer to her, and she's going with the water, and the audience is dying. I mean, and it's not like we wrote that. What we,
right.
She did physical comedy in that. She was really in her. Well, somebody said Ellen was in her element. She was really in her element. That night was one of another highlight of everybody's life, I think, that was there. It was, my daughter was there. She was in the audience. It was just magic.
Wow. And so you knew right away, and so it wasn't a huge surprise when it was nominated for an Emmy and got a Peabody Award.
No, I wasn't. I was surprised that it won when the director didn't win. When Gil Younger didn't win, I thought, oh, and we were up against the yada yada Seinfeld thing.
Oh,
which
wow.
is a great, great show. And he was, I'm sure it was Peter Mellman. I think every time I saw him, he said, we was robbed. He was kidding. And they won the Writers Guild Award. We were nominated for that too. But because that was such a well-written show. But anyway, so that was very exciting. All I could remember was my feet hurt,
So, okay, so now you write this, you win a Peabody Award, you win an Emmy Award, and you get fired.
Well, fired is not the, I mean, we probably could have stayed. I have the feeling Ellen would have, I could have said something to her, or, her manager could have said something to her. But my feeling about it was I didn't know what to do after that, because my feeling about that character that had been developed over the 4 years was that she wasn't able to have any kind of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was necessarily because she was going after the wrong sex. That there was something about that character that was like this, that she was so funny, but that
Mm-hmm.
was an okay thing that she was like that. So I said, what's
Right.
going to happen? There's now this elephant in the room. Is it all going to be about dating girls? What's going to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy dating women?
Mm-hmm.
And so we did not feel bad about that. And then we got to move on to Hiller and Diller. I'm not sure it was right away. It might have been the Drew Carey show. But then when we got Hiller and Diller, we got to be the executive producers of a show we didn't create. There isn't a better spot to be in. If it fails, nobody's going to point the finger at us. you know. And it was created by Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel,
Mm.
who wrote Parenthood, the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and many, many shows, and are so brilliant. And the show would have been terrific, really. There was a lot of problems with it, but we really had a good time doing that show.
Okay, so and then what?
And then what we did, we created our own show. We created According to Jim.
And where did that come from? How did that happen?
Well, think about it. We were under development contract with ABC Disney.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own offices there, and
Had you developed other shows that didn't get
yeah,
made?
we wrote 8 pilots that didn't get
Oh,
made.
uh-huh.
Some of which we got paid for, some of which none of them got shot, but some of them went to script.
Mm-hmm.
So they all were attached to, like, we wrote one for Caroline Ray, we wrote one for Tim Bagley, we wrote one for Brian Regan,
I love Brian.
with the guy that was in, is it called Swimming with Sharks? The one with the Kevin Spacey movie, the young guy that was played the guy that was being the assistant that was being
I don't know. So now
abused.
wait, was According to Jim your ninth or your eighth?
It might have been the eighth or the ninth. I'm
Uh-huh.
not
It
sure.
was
I'd
the
have
eighth
to
or the
look at
ninth.
it.
And so you'd written all these scripts that hadn't.
Stars attached, and then we were very fortunate that Suzanne Buchanan,
Mm-hmm.
who, by the way, at that time was married to Brad Falchuk, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So she worked for, and now I can't remember. She started at ABC. She was an ABC executive who went into development, left that job, and went into development at Disney. And in many ways, I think we were her first project. And she knew what ABC needed. Think about that. So that you think about why pilots don't get on. It's very often,
Nepotism.
it's not nepotism exactly, but it's knowledge. It's business. And we could have gone through our whole careers never getting a show on the on the air. So even though John and I think we did a good job creating a show, and then getting Jim Belushi attached, we
Did you write it for Jim?
yes, we did. Once we actually did the script, we originally we pitched it. We were talking to Suzanne. She said they need a family show. So John thought, let's do My Family, because he was, married with 2 little children, 2 little
Mm-hmm.
girls, and let's do that. And then they wanted to attach Tom Selleck to it, and we thought, well, we love Tom Selleck, but he's not particularly funny. We really want somebody really funny. And then somebody mentioned Belushi, so we started looking at some movies because he had done a million movies.
Uh-huh.
And even though we'd already knew who he was and everything, and people said, he's a nightmare. And to work with, though, for somebody with TV experience with him said he's a nightmare. Even our agent said nightmare.
Mm.
And we met him.
But you decided to keep doing it.
Well, we met him, and he was in a new relationship. His wife
Uh-huh.
was a young new wife who was a real
Mhm.
sweetheart, and they were either already had one kid or she was pregnant. I can't remember what this. And he had an older child, Rob Belushi, was a doll, great kid, who was a grown up, and I found him charming and even attractive. You know, I think that it's just a matter of taste. I thought if I find him attractive, maybe a quarter of the women out there will. That's pretty good.
Mhm.
He's very funny. He's very cute. And we kicked it around for a while, and then we pitched it to ABC and Disney with Jim with us.
Oh,
And that's what made that pitch work
wow.
because he started telling stories.
I was going to say he must have been funny in the
He was so
pitch.
funny, so
Hmm.
funny. And then we got Courtney Thorne Smith, and how
Tony
wrong,
Bronigal.
yeah, how wrong can you go? I mean, it started out really good. It was hard though, I was getting to an age where I was ready to leave. And I think it's a common story in television that you work so hard to get somewhere and you get there and you're ready to quit. You're so tired. I mean,
Yeah.
John and I went to, before we got an agent, we went to Gersh,
Hmm.
which was an agency. I
Hmm.
think we were, in fact, sitting in the office of the guy that was the Gersh himself. And while we were there, he got a phone call and he took the call and he went, "Yeah, you sold it." "Yeah, I know. I know. Well, we'll just see how it goes. You wanted this for a long time. I know." Anyway, he hangs up and he says, "That's a guy named Dick Wolf. He just sold a show called Law and Order about trying to quit television."
Wow.
That's how long ago that was.
Wow.
I love that story when I started watching what was happening with Law and Order. I thought, wow,
And it's
it's
still going strong now. I mean,
and
it's
it's so
like the
good.
show
It's
that
so
will
good.
never end.
It won't. Anyway, so that was selling according to Jim was because it was my out. Also, I knew that, hey, as soon as we go into syndication, I can quit and go back to music, which is what I wanted to do.
Even back then, you knew that.
Yeah, I mean, even though I knew I was too old, it's not like I'm heading for stardom, But I liked being on stage singing. I really liked it with the
And were
guitar.
you doing it all along, Tracy? Did you keep that up?
No, I wasn't. I brought
Hmm.
my guitar to work because I often had to write a song for shows
Hmm.
because they needed it immediately, and I could do that, and then we could
Right.
send it to the supervisor, and then they would have it done. And I didn't sing them, but I would
Right.
write them. So, and then I had people like Katie Lang sang one of the songs I wrote on Ellen's show. That was
Wow.
very exciting, very exciting.
Wow.
And Eddie Fisher. I mean,
Wow.
this would never happen. I mean, there's more too, and I can't think of them. Ellen herself sang some of them, and
Wow.
Jolie.
Wow. So now, okay, so so how long did According to Jim last?
8 seasons.
Holy shit.
But I left after sometime in the middle of season 2 or 3 when I saw that it was going to be syndicated.
Hmm. So, okay, so you leave According to Jim and it's forever your baby.
Yep.
And
And I told my agent, I said, get me the kind of deal that makes it so I never have to work again. And if I do have to work, I'm like your mother. You have to take care of me.
wait,
So
what does that mean?
I said, think of me as your mother. If I don't have enough money, you have to take care of me. Something like that. I said it better and funnier. So he got me a very good deal, and then I was suddenly singing in little clubs for 10 people and a dog. You know,
Did that how long did it take you to transition to that?
in about a minute.
A minute.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I went to Nashville and took songwriting, literally songwriting 101. for, a
But
week.
you'd already been writing songs.
Yeah, I knew how to write songs, but now that I had the experience of having to write whole stories in 22 minutes, I thought, well, this is the same. This is like 4 minutes, 3 minutes. I have to write stories. Let me go to the place where they do it best.
Mm,
And I learned a lot there in a couple weekends, actually. And you
wow.
remember my song Waffle Boy, which I think you've heard. I'm not going to do it now. It's 6 minutes long. But anyway, it's because I was in Nashville in a Waffle House and saw it happen.
Okay, so and then you took Harriet Chalk's class, no? Didn't you study with
I
Harriet?
came back here and took
Mm,
Harriet's class for a long
mm,
time.
mm,
I mean, 10 years, something like that,
mm,
on and off.
mhm,
Harriet's the best teacher. And the
mhm,
people in that class, sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's some great people in there that are so helpful.
mhm. And so I know that this part of the story. So how what has your music career been like since you've moved
Well,
to that?
I got a band very organically. I was really happy with that, but I was once again I was a boss, which I had been in television in my last couple of years in television, and I didn't really enjoy being in that position, telling a group of musicians what to do.
And you had to like it's also a lot of work. I
It's
mean,
a lot of work, a
rehearsals
lot of
and
work.
gigs
Oh
and
my God. And at
yeah.
first it was fun. I mean,
Hmm.
God, I'm making it sound horrible. It was really fun for a while.
Hmm.
But then, like the girl singers, the first girl singer was fantastic and the right fit for the sound. She, thought we would go somewhere, but I wasn't terribly ambitious,
Ambitious.
you know what I mean, at my age. So then somebody took her place who was wonderful, but
Hmm.
it was a slightly different sound. And then somebody took her place. And meanwhile, the guys were staying and getting older, and we're all getting older. And finally, I just thought, I can do this alone, and so I started going and singing by myself. And we did McCabe's as a band, but then I started doing it as myself.
Hmm.
And it's just easier. It was
Yeah.
just easier. Yeah.
So you're going to sing something for us? Will you sing us something?
I will. This is the most, I wrote this a while ago, but it's the most recent song that I have. So that's why I'm singing it, but it also has to do with something we all deal with. Let's see. Do signs of aging mystify you? Did you think you'd go the other way? Did you think you'd beat the odds and get younger every day? You thought your smile would save your ass, that you could charm the pants off gravity. Like, if only gravity could see, it wouldn't do this shit to me. You were going along fine like Benjamin Button, with a minimum of nip and tuck, until your lucky streak came to a halt. Now you can't shake the feeling that it's your fault. You're eating well, your weight is fine, yeah. You exercise, you toe the line. You shy away from too much sun. You're doing what you've always done. But you're still going the way of all flesh. Soon you're gonna have to choose between the lines appearing on your face or your butt fitting into jeans. You were going along fine like Benjamin Button, treating time like it was nothing till reality hit you on the head. You're gonna get old, you're gonna get dead. What day is this? What time is it? It's not just your face that's losing it. In your dreams, you're young again, yeah, like 17 or 42, with no concern about the years you don't have ahead of you. Yeah, in your dreams, you're on the road in a t-shirt and your boyfriend's car with Gordon Lightfoot on the radio, and you've got your good guitar, and you're going along fine like Benjamin Button, just singing, dancing, prancing and strutting till your carefree highway comes to an end, and you're over the hill going round the bend. I was going along fine like Benjamin Button.
Oh, Tracy, you're such a wonderful songwriter, and I just love your
Thank you.
easy style is just mesmerizing, wonderful. That's
Thank you,
wonderful. What a
Vicki.
great song. Before we go, I just want you to tell us a little bit about Charlotte Shorts.
Oh, Tuesday night, June 17th, at the Groundling Theater is Charlotte Shorts. My daughter writes this show, and it's Groundlings in the show. And I don't know what to say about it, except we've been doing it over here, and like we did it 10 years ago, a different iteration of it, and we're doing it, it's sort of different now, but we're doing it at the main stage at the Groundling Theater. And let's see, Tuesday night, June 17th.
And you're directing it.
And I'm directing it, of course.
And who is in it that we might know?
Well, let's see. You'd recognize these people, but I don't know if you know that. Well,
Lorraine's not in it this time?
Laraine might be in it. We're not sure yet. Tim Bagley might be in it. A lot of these people can't commit this far in advance. So we have several people in mind for certain things. But Jordan
Well,
Black,
so how do you direct it if you have certain people that are definite?
I've directed a lot of these people in so many things. I know what they do, and we'll get them. Jordan Black, who's incredible. Sarah Baker, who you've seen, but you'd have to look up her face probably, but she's brilliant. Andrew Friedman, who's I guess a regular on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's been in so many things. Again, you'll recognize all these people. That's terrible. I can't. Michael Chervin, who's now the managing director of the Groundlings. So I like to be able to say that the managing director is in our show. And oh God, I'm leaving some people out. I'm so ashamed.
Well, but Tracy, this is a good time for you to talk a little bit about Lynn, because we really haven't talked about Lynn
Lynn
Stewart,
was somebody that was always in this show,
which I saw her in it.
and,
Yes.
we miss her so. Lynn was my best friend in so many ways. She had other best friends, but we talk on the phone probably every day. And I was the one that, I don't know, she talked to Doug Cox every day. I know that. But I think I was the one that she complained about things she was going through with certain people too. Because I don't think Lynn liked to complain about things ever. And so when she didn't know how to deal with the way someone was treating her, because she would take a lot, like we all do, like all us women's do. And she would be crying, calling me crying. And so we were very, very close. And
you were very, I mean, I saw you together dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And you guys were sisters. You were absolutely sisters.
And, we'd go to dinner and the Groundlings twice a month. I haven't been to the Groundlings since she passed.
Yeah,
Which
but
I
before the pandemic, you guys were together like every day. You were always together,
always together.
always together.
Yeah. And I think that Lynn was physically sick, for quite a while before she knew she was sick,
Okay, so I
which I
wanted
think
to
is a
ask you about
common
that because
thing.
I didn't know anything until a few days before she passed.
Yeah, she
So,
had a tumor
mhm,
uh, next to her liver. There's a special name for it. I don't know the name of it. That was interfering with her liver function. Now, the thing that makes that so difficult is they have to do things like putting stents in your liver, and then they have to do chemo, and the chemo leaves you open to infection, and then you can get infection from the stents in your liver. I mean, it's it was
how long was she sick, Tracy? Did that she knew about?
uh she let's see, I was with her the night before she went in the hospital. I was with her in the morning. We went to farmers market in the morning. We met at our little group that we meet at farmers market, and right after that she was with Liza, and Liza said, "You look yellow." And they went to the emergency room, and she had jaundice,
Hmm.
which means liver.
Hmm.
And she went in the hospital, and she never got out. She went to Cedars, but then she went to Orange County,
How
where
long before she passed was that?
well, that was December 14th is her birthday, so that was uh, she died February 2 or 3, like a month and a half, something like that.
It was fast. But you suspect that she was not well prior
Well, I
to
mean,
that.
when I saw what she had, and because she didn't look good to me either when I saw her the night before or the morning
Hmm.
of her going in the hospital, I thought to myself, she looks like she's lost some weight, and I don't think she knows it. So
Hmm.
she'd always, over the last year or two, she'd make plans and then bail a lot. I don't
Hmm.
feel good, you know. And she went to the doctor a lot, but I don't think she got this part checked. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
just don't think she did. She got her,
Hmm.
well, they were careful with her heart because she had high blood pressure,
Hmm.
you know. I mean, of all the people to go, I thought that when Paul Rubens died, well, I thought that with Phil and I thought that with John Paragon. But when Paul Rubens died, I thought, all right, that's the end of an era. But that wasn't the end of the era. Lynn Stewart's death is the end of the era, you know. That's
Did you have you had time? You had some time.
I went to
So,
visit her with Charlotte came with me both times. We went
mhm.
twice when she was in Orange County at the hospital there, and she went to her sister's a little bit. She was able to go, but then they brought her back, and I don't know what to say. I didn't have words with her because I didn't know what to say at
Mm.
all. The
Oh,
best visitor she had was John Brace. Do you know John Brace,
I
the
don't think so.
casting agent? And
Mm-mm.
Getty Watanabe and John Brace.
Mm-mm.
They were there probably almost every day because they would make her laugh and goof around and stuff. Well, I, I didn't know how to do that with her at that time. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know Paul Rubens was sick.
I
I
was
know
going to ask you that too.
he called me maybe a couple weeks before he passed, and I didn't call him back. Not because I don't love him or didn't love him. I just didn't, just didn't get to it and didn't do it.
Mm.
I didn't know he was sick. So I feel bad about that. That'll stay with me. And it'll
Well,
stay with me that I couldn't be honest with Lynn at the end there to say, what do you say? It's not, I mean, she was joking around about dying, but, when it was clear that she was going to pass, what do you say? Do you say goodbye? I don't know. I didn't know what to, I didn't, and her sister was there all the time. And I didn't know. I thought, well, I don't want to offend Gail. I don't, I
mhm.
mean, I just, you know,
Lynn knew whatever
well, she knows I
tense.
love her,
Uh,
and I know she loves me. I knew she loved me, but I didn't know what to say. And there are people that when my mother was dying, we could talk about it.
mhm.
But with Lynn, I didn't feel free to talk about it,
Hmm.
which maybe I should have. I don't know.
I don't think there's any should here, Tracy. I think everything happened the way it was meant to happen. And Lynn takes your love with her. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt
Well, if
about
there's
that.
anything afterwards, she's up there having a ball with those guys. Because that, I have a bulletin board here. The left side of it is black and white pictures of people who are gone. The right side is color. That left
Wow.
side of that thing looks like way more fun than what's going on the right side, except my daughter and my grandson, and my sister and my brothers. But, Ricky Jay, Paul Rubens, Rennie Santoni, Suzanne Wong,
Hmm.
Phil Hartman, John Paragon, Lynn,
Yeah.
and the other people you don't know, but they were. I was Lotus Weinstock, some great, funny people, fun people, and that side of the thing looks more fun to me,
Well, don't be visiting that site
No,
anytime
I'm not.
soon. But so before we, I don't want to leave. Oh, so okay, so you're directing Charlotte's shorts. Your niece is. We have to talk about Hannah for a moment.
Oh,
Just got renewed with Hacks. Just got
yeah.
renewed. I read it today.
The lovely, adorable Hannah Einbinder, who I have so many pictures of when she was young, because she's my niece, and also doing little things with Charlotte that are so funny together, imitating me and Laraine on the phone. So
Oh.
funny, and who would have thunk? I don't know.
Jeff Zane is here, by the way, and he heard you talk about Suzanne. He's
Oh,
on the
yeah.
show.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
So okay, so you're directing Charlotte's shorts, you're doing your music. Is this a happy time in your life doing what you want to do when you want to do it?
I watch more television than I ever did.
Okay, what are you binging right now? Because
but I
Handmaid's
actually
Tale
like it.
ended and I'm dying. The Last of Us is going to be over this week. What are you
I
watching?
didn't watch The Last of Us. I watched the first season, but now, so it's really great.
It's really great.
Because I loved the first season, but I don't know
It's
why.
really great. There's something that's troubling, but it's really great. It's really
All right,
great.
I'll get into it. Right now, I'm watching a BBC thing called I, Jack Wright. But I don't know.
What is it called? Because
I, Jack Wright. But I don't know how old it is. It might be something that's a little bit older, but
I don't care. We're watching Vera with Brenda Blethyn. I watch old things. I don't care.
Yeah, well, anyway, I like I, Jack Wright. It's I'm finding it pretty interesting. Let's see what my favorite thing recently. I'm watching Your Friends and Neighbors.
I was just gonna suggest
I'm finding
that.
it really to be real. I wasn't interested in the premise, but I'm
Me
liking
either.
it very much.
Me too, and it grows more and more and more. And I think there's only a couple left, but yes,
Yeah,
and I think there's one tonight. No, tomorrow.
Friday, I think.
Yeah, it comes Thursday night. We get it as soon as it's hot off the presses. Yeah.
Let's see what else. Oh God,
Did you watch The Handmaid's Tale?
I didn't. I haven't finished it. I haven't watched the last couple seasons. I stayed with it for 2 or 3 seasons, and I don't know what happened. I just stopped watching. But again, it's so good.
It's to me, it's the best show that's ever been on television. It's the best written, the best directed, the best acted, and Bradley Whitford's going to be on this show in a couple weeks. And I'm losing my mind. He is so wonderful in this show, and this year he's so wonderful. Yeah.
Well,
But I'm telling you, go back and watch him. I wish I had it to watch over. We still went back and watched from episode 1, season 1, when this season came out, and watched it all again.
Guilty pleasure.
Yes.
It's an embarrassment.
Okay.
I have watched a show called The Last Kingdom 3 times.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a series. It's got 6 or 7 seasons.
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
It stars, I don't know the guy. I can't, Draymond, I think is his last name, Andrew Draymond or something, like Alexander Draymond. He's I think he's Danish. I'm not even sure about that.
Okay.
Anyway, and David Dawson, who you've seen before, if you looked up his picture, you'd recognize him as King Alfred. Now it's terrible. I've seen it 3 times. It's the making of England.
Okay.
The creation of England. It's probably only partially true. I don't know. But I think it's so good. And
Huh.
of course, the star is beautiful. The
Is it
guy.
dramatic? Is it?
It's like, well, did you watch Game of Thrones?
No, I've
Game of
never
Thrones,
seen an
I've seen
episode.
twice through also. It's incredible. I mean, I'm sure some of your friends, the people watching, agree, and then others wouldn't watch it because of the first episode. It's like too much to get through. But The Last Kingdom is really good. This relationship between the main guy, who is destiny is all. Uhtred Babenberg is his name. Uhtred. He's the relationship between him and the king. That's what you're watching it for. It's so
Okay.
beautifully done, so beautifully acted, so frustrating and interesting.
We started a Swedish show. I think it's Swedish last night, Danish. The Secrets We Keep.
Oh, I
Have
haven't. I
you?
haven't watched that
We
one.
just started that. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Well, I
Um,
could give you a list of great, great shows.
okay, I
Really
want the
excellent.
list. I'll exchange because we've
Yeah.
watched pretty much
And did you
everything.
watch
Who?
Money Heist? Money
No.
Heist is a Spanish show. It's subtitled. I've watched that twice too.
I think I started it and I
Oh,
couldn't do
it's
the
well,
first
we might have
episode.
slightly different taste. It's very good.
Okay, I'm writing
Money
it
Heist
down.
is very good. You'll fall in love with everybody in that.
Okay, I like that. Well, I'm game. Tracy, thank you so much for doing this again.
Thank you
And
for having me again. I love
it's
it. I
it's
hope it
wonderful
wasn't
to
too
see you.
confusing for everybody.
I no, I don't think so. And where can they see you? I know Charlotte Shorts is June 17th. Where can they see you play out
Well,
live
I'm doing
next?
a house concert on June 8th, but I don't know. It's somewhere like Altadena or Pasadena, but you have to
You
go
have to know that
online.
where can they go to a club and see you?
Oh, I'm not at any clubs right now.
All right.
I'm just not, you
Well,
know,
so they'll go
I
to
have to
Tracy
pursue
Newman.
them, you know.
They'll go to tracynewman.com and find out what you're doing.
Yeah, or Facebook. A lot of times I just put everything on Facebook.
We love the Facebook, even though it's
We love our
annoying as
Facebook.
hell. Well, I love you and
It's
thank you
so
so
great to
much for
see
doing
you. It was
this.
great to see you at Lynn's thing memorial too, and I'm so glad that Snuffy's doing better.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
tough time. All right.
See you soon, Tracy. Thank you.